You saw nothing. You saw nothing. This is the highest quality production show you've ever watched in your life. I did not play the wrong intro, and Locke and I were not in the wrong positions. Welcome to the Deadlock Podcast, everybody. As you can see, the day I'm having, the week off from MMA, your boy's struggling a little bit. Locke, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. I heard you start out my Lodcast intro. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on? I'm like, I'm getting in the vibe about to do this podcast by myself all of a sudden, and I see the whole.
I lost our one viewer. The one guy who was in here waiting to watch the show live was like, "Oh, fuck, I'm already out, man."
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "Oh, I thought this was the Deadlock Podcast, not the fucking Lodcast. I'm not here for the Lodcast. I want both these guys, just not one of them." Audio listeners have no idea what's going to be going on right now. We did have a little gaffe to kick off the show, but Clint managed to get it all together, and we are pretty much ready to go. Like you said, UFC this weekend. It has us reeling and trying to figure out what the hell to do with our lives. Luckily for your boy, I've been wedding planning this entire time. So, I'm just in the grind. I'm in the midst of everything here, decorating the house and getting all the last minute things. So I'm in a whirlwind of my own. It seems like Clint is really suffering with the lack of MMA that we're going to be having over the next 10 days or so. Clint, you good, buddy? You good over there?
No, I'm okay, man. I got plenty to keep me busy at this point, and actually, the brain break is kind of nice. Getting a couple days off, having to do the usual roller coaster, making sure everything's going right. I am very, very grateful to have a couple of days to reset. But Locke, I always tell everybody, by this point in the week, I'm over it. Like I'm already ready to get back. You know what I mean? Like it's a constant thing. It's a constant grind for us. MLB fans, basketball fans, they got something to watch every single day, and those seasons last forever. Granted, the off season is painful. I get that. But at the same time, you get daily shows for your sport. We got to wait an entire week, even when we're in season. So going a 1 week break is pretty much torture for the MMA fans. I'm definitely ready to get back to the grind. I'm ready to look into next week's card and find some bets. It's what we do, man. Too many days away from it, and I start yearning.
I always wished I was one of those like NBA or NHL guys where you get a game every single day. But after getting through that 7-week stretch of all these fights all the time, it's a rough one. It's a rough go. Obviously, trying to study for 24 fighters a week, and now imagine having to do it every single day. Could you imagine like a 10 fight card every single day? Sure, like the fan in us would be great, but the content creator in us is going to be like, oh my God. Yeah. What do we got to do? Even Tuesday Night Contender Series, I'm like, this is a lot. When we're doing things like that. So, I'm just happy that we got this 1 week off where we can kind of just get everything back on track. You're obviously coming off of a huge win this past weekend. So that's great in terms of, taking that momentum and swinging it into the next event that we got coming up on June 4th. And I'm on a weekend winning streak myself. So really want to keep this hot hand going. You got the hottest hand of all, of course, with that big Chase Huber hit that you had this past week. Got the shout out from Ario and Conor Brooks and the guys over there at the MMA Hour. That's always a good feel. Did you, with all this craziness going on, I'm sure there's been a multiple tagging and clipping and getting Chase Hooper trying to get involved into this thing. Have you had any interaction with the man since this whole thing popped off over the weekend?
Unfortunately not. I've tried. There's been a couple different times where I've tagged him and stuff. I've reached out, definitely tried to, send him my way a little bit so he knew I was on the boat and stuff like that. But no such luck getting in touch with the man, unfortunately. He is plenty busy. He's coming off of a big win himself, so I'm sure he doesn't have time for, little old me screaming into the ether on Twitter. But I am happy I got the recognition from Ariel. Obviously, the new nickname I feel like suits me, the guy who yells on Twitter. That's totally I'm good with that. I can rock with that. So you know what? We'll see what happens, man. Well, you know what? It's funny. I just noticed something. We will talk about Prediction Strike later in the show, of course. But yeah, I got something to say on that whole front because I backed Chase Hooper every which way I
You
possibly
did.
could.
You did.
And we'll have to take a look at that when we get to that point in the show.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm very interested to see what it did for your portfolio as well, because I actually didn't look it up myself yet. But yeah, very much looking forward to getting into Fighter Stonks later in the show. But I do believe we do have a couple topics we want to hit beforehand. Do we not, Clint? What do we got coming up first?
Yeah, man, we've got a couple things to talk about. Keep everybody entertained. A couple people in our chat, JSJ23 already saying just what I needed on a non UFC week. That's what we're here for. We got you. We got some stuff to talk about. There's a little bit of MMA news, and the first thing that we want to talk about right off the top, we kind of teased it last week. We kind of mentioned that we would tap on it just a little bit. We need the clickbait. Conor McGregor, man. It's going to be some years, even after he retires, his name is just so big. We're going to be continuing to talk about Conor McGregor for some time. Now seems as good a time as any. It's a slow news week. It's an off week for MMA. Let's chat about Conor and what we've got coming up from him, man. He is, you know,
Talking shit.
I don't know what to make of Conor anymore. I'll be honest, Locke. He is very frustrating at this point. Now, granted, he's coming back from like a career-changing injury, so we can't harp on him too bad. But I guess I want to know your thoughts. Where do you think he's at? When do you think we will actually see him? And maybe what do you think is the right matchup for him coming back in? Because obviously he wants to slide straight on into the title shot, which I think is maybe the worst choice he could possibly make. But what other alternatives are there for him? He's got to capitalize on his brand, on his name, and if he faces a top 5 guy and takes another L, the glory days are over for Conor. So does he slip right back into that title shot? What do you think is next, and what do you think is best for Conor coming back?
Before I answer those questions, one of the things that you actually stated I thought is very important is even after he retires, it's going to be years and years that we still talk about him, potential matchups he could have had if he was still an active fighter. Because we're still doing that for Khabib, right? We're still doing that for George St. Pierre, who's been out of the cage since UFC 217. It's going to continue, and the same thing will happen with Conor McGregor as well when he officially hangs up the gloves. But yeah, he's staying relevant. That's all he does. He has to send out a little tweet. He sent out a tweet today calling Beneil Dariush a nobody. You know what I mean? Like he's just doing all these little things to ruffle the feathers so that when he comes back, he has plenty of options and plenty of fighters that are more than willing to fight him. I'm sure anybody from any division will be willing to fight him, all the way from 125 all the way up to heavyweight. They know it's red panty night, right?
True.
That's what it is at the end of the day. Everybody knows that they're going to get paid. Win, lose, or draw against Conor McGregor, they want that fight. It's interesting that he continues to keep himself in the news cycle, right? It just takes one Instagram post, it takes one tweet, and he's more than likely to get into the headlines of MMA Junkie and MMA Fighting. That's everybody eats it up. That's why we started off the show talking about him, because everybody eats it up when we talk about Conor McGregor. I'm even doing shows for like radio guys, and they still end up asking me about Conor McGregor, even though there was nothing in the headlines about them. Somehow he always gets put into the discussion. So we're going to be those low lives out there that are still going to pursue the Conor
Gotta do
McGregor
what you gotta do,
clickbait.
Locke.
Yeah, got to do what we got to do. Get those goddamn DLP numbers up so that we don't have to talk about Conor McGregor anymore. But in regards to your questions or your last question specifically, what should be lined up for him coming back? Nate Diaz, right? That's the only fight that I feel like would be the greatest fight for him in terms of dipping his toe back in the water, right? You're coming back after a catastrophic leg injury. You snap your leg in half. So you want to come back against somebody that you feel comfortable that you can beat. That's Nate Diaz, and is still relevant enough that you're going to be able to sell pay-per-view buys. He could fight a towel and he would still, sell a bunch of pay-per-view buys. But having Nate Diaz on the other end, you already have a built-in storyline. They're 1-1. You got the trilogy fight. It's the easiest fight for him to make at this point in time. That's the one you got to do. Let him fight Nate. Let him get that win. Then we can talk about the other interesting matchups, right? The Jorge Masvidal matchup is still a very intriguing one. If we want to still try to get a little bit of that flame from Masvidal before it totally gets stoked out, right? He's had a couple losses now. People are starting to forget who he is. Not to mention the debacle that he had with Colby Covington outside of that restaurant. His name is still quite relevant. Let's try to get Conor in there to reignite it a little bit. Outside of that, right? They're all dangerous matchups. Michael Chandler's a dangerous matchup. The champion is a dangerous matchup. You know what I mean? Charles Oliveira, the unofficial champion. He is a dangerous matchup. But first fight back, I'm expecting it to be early 2023. I still think he needs a little bit of time to recover, to rehab, to fully be comfortable, going in there and having live action rounds. So I'd be surprised if we see him in 2022. I'm going to say early 23, and we end up getting him versus Nate Diaz. Only thing that makes somewhat sense to me. What about yourself? What are the contenders you think to fight Conor in his first fight back? Because he can fight everybody, right? It's most important what his first fight back is. Who are the contenders for you?
I think the Nate trilogy makes a lot of sense. The problem is, man, I think Nate's done. I think he's just done with the UFC. He's really trying to work hard to get out of that that contract. He's literally pissing on UFC property, posting it online because he's like doing whatever he can to get let go from the company. He's not interested in Conor. So I don't know that that trilogy is ever going to happen, which makes me sad because I do want to see that third and final match. Honestly, for me, I think it's Tony Ferguson, man, a guy that's kind of trapped at that middle zone of 155 and 170. He was talking about, wanting to move up to 170 again. That's where he competed when he was younger on the Ultimate Fighter, and he felt like he had success there, but the UFC told him he needed to move down. He's coming off a bad run lately, coming off that bad knockout. Conor's not ready to come back yet. So by the time he is, I think we could get a healthy, reinvigorated Tony Ferguson. And it's a great spot where both these guys are getting a little bit older. Both these guys are a little bit out of the contenders circle, and we see which one's got it. I mean, it might be a little bit of a quote unquote layup for Conor. And I think that's kind of what he needs. Somebody who he can capitalize his hype on the way he did against Donald Cerrone. And then he can call for a title shot of some sort. But you got to get over that hump first, because if he comes back and he fights Charles Oliveira, Charlie O is going to eat him alive, Locke. We've seen lately what happens if you drop Charles Oliveira. I mean, does anybody think Conor McGregor stands any kind of a chance on the ground against the current champion? I don't. I think that Charles Oliveira slices and dices Conor McGregor on the mat quicker than Khabib probably did. You know what I mean? And on the feet, it's not like he's out of the woods either. So if Conor doesn't KO him clean on that first punch, kind of the same thing that happened with Gaethje. If you don't do it and you don't do it in one, then you're probably in trouble long term. Now, there is also the upside that Charles Oliveira has been clipped and dropped and hurt by a lot of people. Maybe Conor does have that power to starch him straight up in one punch. I'll watch it. Call me a sucker. If they throw Conor in there against Charles Oliveira right off the bat, I will unfortunately pony up and pay for it. But I would prefer him to fight somebody like a Tony Ferguson. Make sure he's healthy, man, because those leg breaks, Anderson Silva, Chris Wyman, you never know if they're going to come back 100% after something like that. And especially a guy like Conor that relies so heavily on his punching power. Can he plant on that leg the way that he used to? Will he be able to hit people as hard as he once did? I don't know. I'd rather see it tested before we throw him in there for a title shot. But like I said before, at the same time, it's Conor. So, if he's only going to be around for 2-3 more fights because he's not what he was, the UFC probably wants to capitalize on it as much as they can, throw him in the title shot, make all the money, and then let him sail off into the sunset after a couple more.
I love how you said you'd pony up and buy, Conor versus Charlie. I think most people would pony up and fight or pay him or pay the pay-per-view price to watch him fight a towel, like I said earlier, right? Like anybody you throw him in there against, they're gonna watch it. It's Conor McGregor. He's still, selling pay-per-views. He's still at that point where he has that pull where no matter who you guys put him up against, they're going to watch it. Put him in there against Bobby Green, right? That's something that we're discussing a couple weeks ago.
I actually would
as a potential opponent of his as well. A guy that will talk back to him, a guy that's going to have solid shit talk and have a great performance against him as well. It's not like he has to worry about a wrestler here. He's going to be fighting a guy that will likely throw down with him. That's what Conor needs. So, I'm excited regardless who he fights, but I think we need to temper our excitement a little bit because I still think we're 7, maybe 8, maybe 9 months away from him actually coming back and competing inside the cage.
I absolutely agree.
Any last thoughts on Conor here? I think we covered it pretty well, right?
No, I think I'm good, man. Yeah. I definitely don't want to linger too much on that topic because everyone debates it to hell. Like you said, we got to talk about it. It's kind of what we do here on the show. And we've got a couple other topics that I think are more interesting. So I'm ready to move on if you are.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on to the next one. It was obviously we had a huge aftermath in regards to the main event that we had this past weekend of Holly Holm and Ketlin Vieira. Ketlin Vieira picks up a split decision victory in a fight where the judges scored it 48-47 times two for Ketlin Vieira. And then on the flip side, we had 48-47 for Holly Holm. It seems like rounds 1 and 5 are the most obvious for Holly Holm, as all three judges had it scored that way. The swing rounds actually seem to be round 3. So rounds 2, 3, and 4 were scored for Ketlin Vieira by Michael Bell and Derek Cleary, but Saudi Mata had round 3 for Holly Holm. That's a round that I had scored for Holly Holm. I think she did enough to win that round. It seems like the fans on MMA decisions, based on 400 submitted scorecards, 70% of them scored round 3 for Holly Holm. So, and even the media scores, a lot of them in favor of Holly Holm, right? Going back and even watching it again, I still felt she won, right? I know there weren't a lot of people putting too much emphasis on the significant strikes that Ketlin Vieira was landing in that fight, but I felt like they were too far in between to actually give them much significance compared to what Holly Holm was doing, which was damage up against the cage, parlayed with control time. And I know damage is the number one criteria, but when there's not enough damage to outweigh the damage plus control from the other side, I just don't think it's clear enough for Vieira to have won that fight. Even Andre Pederneiras going into that 5th round feels like he's down, right? Feels like he needs a finish to get the dub here, but he still manages to spring the upset. So we got a couple topics that's going to spring off of this. But first, I do want to pose to you, Clint, how you scored that fight. Was there a different swing round in your mind that should have been the deciding factor of this fight? Let's get your thoughts on the decision first, and we'll talk about all the other things that came after it, because it seems like days after we're still talking about it. We got people bickering at each other. It's absolutely hilarious. But let's talk about the scorecard first and foremost. What did you think of
For
that
sure.
fight?
So, like, I had it 2-2 going into 5. I had it
Mhm.
1, 3, and 5 for Holly Holm personally. I
Same.
do think that this is one of those fights. Now, I tweeted this, like, I was live streaming on Pub Sports Radio, sweating tickets and stuff live with my boys. And I tweeted out, I said, nobody call robbery. This is a
Yeah.
close fight. And what we've come to in MMA is that it's all in the eye of the beholder, Lock. The judging criteria, there's so many different disciplines. It depends on what you weigh personally more than the person sitting next to you. That's how you're going to score a fight. The thing that we're seeing recently, and I talked about this on my own show, is that it seems like the judges are favoring the power strikes now. Before, we had a run where the judges were favoring control time. And someone like Holly Holm was a money making machine, because if the judges were favoring control time, you just never could beat someone like that would grind half the round away on you and bank that clock. They're not doing that anymore. Now, if you get caught with a clean 1-2 after holding somebody up against the fence for a minute and a half, the 1-2 is winning because they're the ones who are damaging their opponents. I don't know if this is a recent run or if this is a trend where maybe the UFC has gotten involved and they've told their, the different commissions that they want to lean more towards damage. We don't know those kinds of things. I'm not privy to that kind of an information. We just kind of have to note over the passage of time when those shifts are happening. And that's happening right now. So everybody, if you are a gambler, if you are a bettor, document that moving forward. The control time fighters are slightly at a disadvantage right now, unless they can dominate that control time, basically putting their opponent on the mat, holding them down for, 3.5, 4 minutes of the round. So there's no question whatsoever who won it. If it's close, it's going to the puncher. So, like I said, Locke, I had it 2-2 going into the 5th round. I did score round 5 for Holly Holm. So I had it 3-2 Holly. I tweeted that out and I got talked into a bet on Ketlin Vieira live on the show. So I was sweating it the other way, and I thought Holly won that fight. It was a split decision. It was a close fight. It could have gone either way. I think you can make solid arguments for it no matter which way you see it. Thus, a lot of people lost money and are calling robbery. Guys, it was not a robbery. It was a close fight.
And I'm glad that you brought up the lost money narrative here, because I do think that's going to be very important for the next conversation that we have. But just to give into context for people, round 3 statistics, we had Holly Holm get 2 minutes and 50 seconds of control time in that round. She landed 42 total strikes compared to 27 from Ketlin Vieira. But in terms of significant strikes, 23 to 18 in favor of Ketlin Vieira, stating that she landed the more significant strikes, whereas the chipping away shots that Holly Holm was landing in the control was not weighed as much apparently by the judges, or at least two of the judges, I should say. So obviously a big fallout from this now is, fixing judging, right? That always seems to be the big thing whenever we have a robbery, especially in a main event slot. We had 3 split decisions on this card. A lot of people feeling different ways about each of them, but we want to focus on the main event here. I feel as though we hear it every other week, maybe even every month, where we get to this point where we're having to talk about it on podcasts, where every MMA show is discussing judging. It happens every so often, but nothing ever gets changed, or does it? Right? Does it actually get changed? Do they actually have commission members speak to the judges and all that stuff and say, okay, we got to tighten up this or we got to tighten up that? But no matter what happens, no matter what they do to fix what they are currently working with, whether it's educating the judges, whether it's reminding them of what their criteria is, it's always going to come down to a subjective point of view. Especially having these judges sitting cage side, they might miss a thing or two, especially in a very close round that might have swung it for the other fighter. So it's these small little things that cause a big thing, which is a possible robbery of a decision that people might want to call out. So the first thing that comes out of it is the open scoring discussion, where, in every other sport, after every period, after every quarter, after every inning, each team knows where they're standing. They have 1 run against the other team's 0 runs, so they know they're up 1, and they're going to strategize the rest of the game moving forward based on that. Where in MMA, unless you have an absolutely obvious round, it's pretty much just who do you think won that round? And you see it all the time, Clint. Like whenever you see the corner advice, you always hear more often than not when the fighter gets back to the stool, they're like, "Did I win that round?" Why do we need to? Why do we need to leave it up to interpretation in that moment? Why not just say this is what the judges said? Show them what they're dealing with so that they can strategize moving forward. Now, there's all these arguments that I've heard in terms of, if a fighter knows he's up 2-0, he's just going to cruise in the third round. We already have that. We already have fighters cruising at a certain extent, right? There are fighters that know when they're down, they have to go for broke. They have to be a bat out of hell. They have to throw everything into the punches, try to find a finish, try to find a submission, whatever it is, so that they can get their hand raised, because there's no way they win this fight if it goes to a judge's scorecard. But people keep leaving out the guy that's down 0-2. You think that they're just going to let the fighter cruise? You think they're just going to let the fighter skate around the octagon and just, wait out the 5 minutes and let them win? No, they're going to be going after it. And sure, I've heard from one fighter that I spoke to, he goes, it's very hard to fight a fighter that's not willing to engage, who's willing to just cruise and stay on the outside and not give you too much. Then it comes down to the referees in terms of being like, hey, you're stalling now. You're not engaging. You're not fighting. You're just moving backwards the entire time. You have to throw strikes so that the other fighter has something to work with, not just chasing around the cage the entire time, right? I think of Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana, where she's on her back foot the entire time, but she does a good enough job in terms of closing the distance, getting her shots off, and then getting back out. That is what my perspective of a fighter that is looking to cruise should do, because they're still engaging. They're still allowing the opponent to counter or try to tie them up whenever they do close the distance. So that argument of a fighter will always cruise if they're up 2-0, I think that's invalid, because you're completely disregarding what the losing fighter can do to create chaos, can create something where they can create a winning scenario for themselves. I never understood that. And the last point here, and I'll flip it on over to you to get your perspective on open scoring here. I heard this from Andy Foster on the MMA Hour from, I think it was today's show with Ariel Helwani. Andy Foster, the head of the California State Athletic Commission. One of the reasons he said as to why they don't want open scoring is the anticipation of hearing who won from Bruce Buffer. That should have nothing to do with the fight. Is this a game show? Is this a reality TV show? What is this anticipation that we're building up? Sure, we're still going to get those moments where we're anticipating who Bruce Buffer is going to announce when we get fights that are 1-1 going into that third round. Sure, we'll still have those moments. But for a fighter to know that he's 100% down 2-0 going into round 3, I feel like the fighter having the fate in their hands is much more reliable than just leaving up to, I think I won that round. Eric Anders is a perfect example, right? You'd think I believe he would have thought he was up 2-0 going into that third round. Little did he know he was down. So yeah, I don't get why people are against open scoring. And I don't even want to get into live betting. Oh, it's going to destroy live betting. Think about the fucking fighters who are going with half of their paycheck because the judges robbed them. And I'll talk about that on the flip side of your opinion of open scoring. But there are so many other things that people are bringing into this that has nothing to do with the actual judging and open scoring argument that we're trying to make here. So open scoring. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it benefits the fighters? Do you think it benefits the UFC as a whole? What are your thoughts there?
You know, I guess like I'll say that I don't feel particularly strongly one way or the other. I know there's a lot of people that are sick of the current system and they're wanting to jump on open scoring as the alternative. And I'm not entirely certain that I'm sold on open scoring. I'm not. I know there's a lot of positives from the fighter perspective as far as knowing you're up or knowing you're down. However, I do think that that can influence the fight both positively and negatively because, like you said, if you know you're going into the third round down 2 rounds, you have to finish in that round. We already see that. We see what happens already when a coach tells their fighter, you're down 2 rounds, you got to go out and get a finish. Like it's not like most of the times they can't give their fighter that information. So honestly, I almost feel like the judges scoring is part of the game. Like, do we think that bad judges scorecards are going to go away because there is open scoring? I think we're
No, of course not.
overcompensating for these perceived judging mistakes with open scoring. Those mistakes are still going to be made. Maybe the crowd hears
Of
the
course.
boo when the judge scores that round for the wrong guy. And then the fighter gets emotional in the corner because they should be up 2-0. Instead, they're 1-1 going into the third. I almost feel like it's going to create a can of worms more often than not because we do talk about these robbery situations a lot, Locke. We talk about these bad decisions on the regular, but it's one fight a card, 2 fights a card. How often does it really matter and make a difference? And kind of like last week's event, it was 2-2 going into the third. Most of us thought that. We were talking about how that fight was not a robbery. It was close. I think the split decision makes sense and is appropriate. People feel Holly should not have won that fight. There's a handful of people that feel just as strongly that Ketlin Vieira is the rightful winner of that fight. And in this case, they've got a legitimate argument towards that. Do we think open scoring would have changed the way that went? I don't know that it would have. I think it's
Well,
kind of maybe the
sorry,
wrong
one quick rebuttal
band-aid
there.
for.
Sorry, quick one rebuttal there, Clint. If Holly Holm knew she was down on 2 judges' scorecards going to that fifth round, would she have held her for as long as she did it up against the cage, or would she have worked to try to get a
Yes.
finish? You think so? But like she
I
knows
mean,
if I just grind out this fifth round, I'm losing this fight. Otherwise, knowing that she's down 3-1 going into that fifth round on 2 judges' scorecards, she's going to be trying to throw more punches. She's going to be trying to get that head kick knockout, whatever it is. She wouldn't have tried to play it as safe as she did in that round, in my opinion. That gives the fighters control of their fate, essentially, right? And I agree with you. I don't think that open scoring will fix the problem of judging. But no matter how many seminars and how many times we discuss this topic, judging will always find a way to screw a fighter or two per card out of having their full paycheck. And that's going to be the next argument I bring up here. But please, I apologize for cutting you off there, but I just
no,
felt
you're
like I
good.
need to rebut there a little bit. Continue.
You're good. Honestly, Locke, though, I think that that's part of the game, personally, that I like. You don't know. And that means you've got to go. Some coaches are really good at getting the best out of their fighter. Some athletes are really good at always giving 100%. Some guys can dig deep in that third round. They can keep pushing. Others can't. And I think that's part of the game. If you rely on, oh shit, now I know I'm down, I got to go for it. I don't want that. I want you going for it in the third no matter what. And if you make the mistake, or if your coaches make the mistake of coasting because you think you've done enough, I'm okay with you getting punished for that. I'm okay with you losing a split decision because you thought you had it in the bag, but you coasted for 5 minutes. I actually think there's a strong argument on the flip side of that to say that, if you want to win, all the way back to day one, Locke, to quote the man himself, do not leave it in the hands of the judges. I think it's a piece of the game, and I don't know that it's something that necessarily needs to be fixed.
I, I'm I, I'm glad that you brought up that quote as well, because that's going to go on to my next argument here. And I do want to shout out Dominic Cruz, who was on the MMA Hour, and he gave his 2 cents in regards to this whole thing as well. He brought up let's go back to what Dana said. Don't leave it in the hands of judges because they might screw you. But like for fighters, it's just like, oh shit, like what if I am not able to finish this guy? What if he's very good with his submission defense or his durability or whatever it is? And we do end up having to go to the scorecards. Am I just gonna have to leave it up to the judges to be like, hey, shit, like I think I did enough. I hope I did enough. But how
Yep.
are you actually supposed to know? I'll say this before I continue this argument. I've
Leave
been in
no
the
doubt,
corners
Locke.
of
Leave no
I've been
doubt.
in the sorry.
Leave no doubt. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah, leave
answer.
the I get it. Yeah, that's true. I've been in the corners of a couple amateur MMA fights, maybe even a couple pro MMA fights. And one thing that, from a coach's perspective or somebody that's in the corner, you really overvalue in your mind what your fighter was successful with in that round, because you see them landing the big strikes, but you don't really put as much emphasis on the other fighter landing the same level of strikes on your fighter. Then you have to think about it from the judge's perspective, who's sitting cage side as well. What did they weigh more? So it's all these things. But the other issue here, and I'm glad that Dominic Cruz brought this up, is it comes down to fighter pay at the end of the day as well, right? Because a robbery robs somebody of half their paycheck. The UFC is still in this old way of having the show and win bonus type of thing, right?
Mhm.
It should be a flat fee. Like I don't think we
I
hear as much
agree.
outcry from people in Bellator, because I believe most of those fighters get a flat fee. So if they lose a split decision, like I'm still leaving with the money that I would have gotten if I had won this fight. And I think that if the UFC gives that to the fighters as well, gives them flat fees, like, if they're on a 50-50 contract, give them 75 as a flat fee, essentially, right? So if they do get robbed by a judge, they're not going home with half their pay. Yeah, I mean, that's always one concern with the fighters, is that the ref or the judges are robbing me of my full pay. And I think that's what it comes down to. Similar to what we had about the whole Charles Oliveira and weight miss issue. Like, I don't care about him having the title as long as he continues to get paid the way he should be getting paid. It doesn't matter. Everything else is irrelevant. And I feel like that's the important issue here as well. And I'm glad that Dominic Cruz brought this up. What's your thoughts on that? It seems like you were pretty much in agreement in regards to having a flat fee here for most fighters.
Absolutely. I will 1000% agree with you on all of those points. I think the fighters deserve to be paid a flat rate with a finish bonus or some kind of
Yeah.
built-in bonus structure.
Yep.
Honestly, I mean, and this is where like I would go full on tinfoil hat promoter with this kind of shit, Lock. Do rolling bonuses. If you've got a finish bonus and then say you get a bonus for back-to-back finishes, three finishes in a row, let's make that bonus bigger. 4 finishes in a row, let's make that bonus bigger. Like if you incentivize the fighters, that's the way to go. But I also think that at a certain point they deserve to be paid fairly to show up and do their jobs. Now, a promoter might tell you that if a fighter is potentially losing half their check, they're far more hungry to go out there and get the win. I think there's something to that. It's an old-fashioned dangle the carrot type of approach, but I think we're dealing with, the human version of caged animals a lot in this situation. It's true. It's true. If you put half their dinner on the table and the other half only comes if they win, they will fight harder for it. We've seen it with these higher level athletes. It's hard to wake up and do the road work when you're waking up in silk sheets. It's hard to be hungry after you've made your money. So I think there is something to that. I think we are at a point that we can move past that, take a more standard approach like most of the major organizations. The NFL does a perfect job, Locke, of they say, look, you're a proven commodity. You're a fighter. You've done your job. Here's your paycheck. And then if you do X, Y, and Z over the course of the season, you get this, and this piled on top of it. Shit, do that. Go, okay, here's a finish bonus. A first round finish is 50K. A second round finish is 20K. A third round finish is 10K. Like, prioritize, incentivize, but then pay them their real money that they have worked hard for, that they deserve. I absolutely agree with paying fighters flat rate and then finding a way to add on top of it.
Finish bonus, I think, would be the cherry on top of all of this. Give them an incentive to go out there and finish, and that also potentially, keeps them away from getting robbed by judges or whatever you want to call it, right? Like I really feel like that finish bonus will incentivize these a lot. And our guy True Shot in the comment section here saying they are getting a flat fee, their show money. But still, like a lot of fighters really believe that they're going to go out there and win and are expecting to get that full 40 and 40 rather than just going home with 40, right? Like
And
it's a lot.
maybe that comes down to management, Locke. Maybe True is right. Maybe that comes down to your management, because if you're okay, if you're saying I'm the biggest badass out there, I'm willing to say pay me 30K just to show up. I'll get the other 30K with the dub. Then I guess that's on you and your management team. I would personally rather say, hey, give me 45K to show up, give me 20K with a win, and then another 20 with a finish. Like that, you know what I mean? Like I would be looking for a more structured approach. But maybe that's not everybody, maybe that just comes down to management, the way they negotiate. But personally, I would feel like we should move away from that moving forward ever so slightly. We're getting mainstream here, Locke. The fighters are getting more and more recognizable. The
Yep.
UFC is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where we've got to move away from some of these archaic, structures. And I think that's one of the ones that needs to go. If the fighters aren't going to fight for it, if their managers aren't going to push for that change, though, who am I to talk about it? They got to make that move.
Yeah, in regards to locker room bonuses, which I think one of our our live stream or live chat guys is speaking about, they are not as frequent as they used to be. Like I'm hearing like Matt Favola, for example, I believe one of his last couple fights, he got robbed of a performance bonus or even robbed a fight of the night and didn't even get anything on the back end, even though it's probably one of the best fights on the card, right? These locker room bonuses don't happen as much as they used to before WME bought the UFC, because that's when they used to like just give out bonuses whenever the hell they wanted. Now they're a little bit more structured. Now is the time where I think they should be doing the flat fees and the finish bonuses. That will incentivize fighters to really go for it rather than just giving it, hey, you got 40 to show up, you win another 40 if you win this fight. But yeah, I don't think that's the way to go here. So final thing here, Clint, you are for or against open scoring?
Technically speaking, Locke, I'm on the fence. I know that's a bad answer, so I guess I'll side with against open scoring. I'm not going to cry over spilled milk either way, but I think I would argue for against more than 4.
And I'm going to be on the 4 side. I am also in the midst of gathering some data from coaches and fighters. I want to get at least 100 votes on this in terms of whether they are for or against open scoring. And right now, it's pretty overwhelming for open scores from coaches and active fighters right now. There are a couple that were against it. They did bring up the thing of they're scared that a fighter is going to cruise in the 3rd round, and they're very hard to engage with when they're just running away the entire time. And I've even had one coach that brought up something that you brought up, Clint, which was it might get in the fighter's head, heading into the next round and thinking they won the last round because they thought they did enough to win the last round, but the judges were like, no, you don't have to do that. So they're on the fly having to fix their game plan, change their game plan, come up with a different way that they actually can get the dub. So yeah, very interesting topic. We could talk about this for the entire episode if we wanted, but we got plenty of other things to get through, to the extent that we're even going to drop one of the topics that we had on here, which was the Volkov and Rozenstruik preview that we wanted to do. But we'll talk about that in the deadlock duel, as we're going to do that a little bit later. But first, exactly. What we're first going to do, though, is get into one of our favorite segments, one of our best segments, I'd say, is Fighter Stonks. All right, Clint, Fighter Stonks, you know the deal here. Shout out to Prediction Strike for pretty much hosting this this game that we're doing. Let me see if I can bring it up there, and let's just get the banner here for people to remember if you guys use the promo code LOCK, you guys will receive a free Fighter Stonk. We can call it Stonk or Stock. If you want to call it Stonk, you're more than welcome to call it Stonk to play with us. But you'll get a free Fighter Stock with a deposit of $20 or more if you guys sign up with Prediction Strike. It is pretty much a stock market for professional sports. As you see on the screen there, you guys can have stock in football fighters. Clint, are they fighters? No, they're players. Football players, basketball players, baseball players, and
football's
MMA
basically
fighters.
A combat sport.
There we go. Exactly. Just human rams. They're pretty much. Yeah, and obviously for the sake of the show, we're sticking with MMA. Got me a nice little portfolio here. A lot of big names: Magomed Ankalaev,
It's a
Hamzat
lot of red.
Chimaev, Manol Fiorot, Song Yadong. And for some reason, my alarm is going off right now. Let me stop that. There we go. Mike Malott, who I think has a very bright future as well. Glad to have him on my roster. Nobody I really want to sell this week. Obviously, Maximov and Rakic picked and Kutalaba picked up losses over the last 2 weeks. I'm still going to hold on to them because I think they'll be able to bounce back a little bit. Rakic might have to wait on him a little bit longer because he has a torn ACL, but I'm going to hold on to that stock there. But there is one fighter on this upcoming card that I feel like I got to take before my guy Clint gets to him, and he is no other than Ovzar Evluev,
Ooh,
was
that's a
taking
good
on
one.
Dan Ige. He's sitting at $1.92 right now. I'm going to buy one stonk on him right now. Yeah, I think the kid has a high ceiling. Initially, I thought this line against Dan Ige was very wide. After running the tape, I absolutely agree with it, and I think that we'll see Movsar Evlev continue to improve. You saw him when he opened up; he was $1.74. Now he's $1.92. I think with this win over a ranked Dan Ige, it should get his stock up a little bit higher here, and I think that we're going to see that maybe around the $2, maybe even $2.20 mark come the next time we do Fighter Stonks. So yeah, I really just want to pull the trigger on Ige here. Hopefully I didn't snatch it from you, Clint. Hopefully you didn't have plans of taking him there. But yeah, that's the only fighter I wanted to buy here.
I think
What do
you
you
got
got?
that backwards. Don't you mean hopefully I was planning on it? Don't you want to sweep that out
Actually,
from
yeah,
under
you're
me?
right. Well, I just mean from your perspective. I'm trying to feel sorry for you if you did want to snatch him. But
I hear
yeah,
you. I
well,
hear
what do
you.
you got? What anything you want to buy or sell this week?
The first thing I want to do, Lovick, is take a victory lap. My boy
Hey, there we go.
Chase Hooper coming through big for me last week. And if you remember, that was a last second ad. We were almost wrapped up with the show, and I went, shit, I'm going to grab me some Chase Hooper. He's already up 18%. So a nice little
Nice.
return on that one. And you know what, Locke? There's one other stock that I'm honestly baffled. I am baffled that I let this one go so long. I am shocked that I
Oh, am I
didn't
going
pick
to
it up
kick
last
myself?
week. Sam Hughes. I should have
Ooh.
already bought a stock on my girl, Sam Hughes. Now, thankfully, the world does not yet know the greatness of Sam Hughes. So even since her last fight, she's only gone up 1%, which I think is egregious. So I'm expecting this number to climb higher. I like Sam Hughes a lot. I love that she's at Fortis MMA. I bet on her last week. She was the second biggest bet that I had on the card last week. And I am very, very excited to have her and part of her stonk. So I'm looking forward to what she does in the near future. And I'm just a little frustrated I didn't buy her last week. Getting bailed out here that the world doesn't think much, and she only popped up 1%. So I'll take it.
That's a sneaky grab right there, my man.
I think so too. And now this is where we start getting in the weeds, Locke. I can't remember your entire stonk roster. So
Sure,
I'm not
maybe.
sure if this is one that you have or not yet. But I would like to purchase Kevin Holland, Big Mouth,
Ooh,
the man
I
himself.
do not have him.
I'm so happy to hear that because I am going to take the superhero Kevin Holland. Now his stonk price tag is $1.89 for a guy that had the meteoric rise that he did when he first came to the UFC. Now he's saving old ladies, crossing the street and kissing babies and superhero flipping over vehicles. How can I not ride the wave of Kevin Holland? I think that man is going to do more than enough damage to pay off his stock price. I think his shares are going straight through the roof. Honestly, Locke, I'm taking this break week, full opportunity to give me some brain rest. So I haven't looked at all into this card next week. The only guy who I would like to get on as a stock is my man El Jefe, Jeff Molina, and he was one of the first stocks I purchased on the show. So I've already got him on my roster. So there's no need to purchase any additional stocks, in my opinion. That was the one bet that I made already going into next week's card. I snagged him at minus 155. He jumped off the page at me. So I'm already on Jeff Molina from a stonk perspective. And I got to really look into the rest of the card before I make any other moves. I think I'm set with what I've got adding those two.
Yeah, that's going to be a big stonk watch for you as well, right?
It
Especially with
is.
him having his fight coming right up against Zalgas Sumagulov. That's actually taking place on June 4th. That is also a way for us to remind you guys we're not going to have any show next week, not even a Fighter Stonks check-in next week, because Wednesday is probably one of the, I'd say, the second busiest day of my wedding week that I have next week. So we won't be doing anything next week. We will be back the following week, and then we'll be able to see if one, if Jeff Molina picks up a win, and two, how much his stock actually increases, similar to what Chase Super probably went through, right?
Locke, I'm a little sad right
Oh,
now.
you
I
got
just
another one?
realized that there is a stonk that I want. Unfortunately, however, Prediction Strike has not added the fighter to the roster. So I'm just
Who's
gonna
that?
keep that to myself. I think
Who's
I'm
that?
just gonna keep
Hey,
that
hey,
to myself.
we'll do this. We'll do a friendly truce here. I will not purchase this fighter, but you are more than welcome to tell me who it is, and then I can tell the
Benoit
prediction strike.
Saint Denis. I would
Ooh,
like the stonk of Benoit
interesting.
Saint Denis.
That is a very interesting. Yeah, they only have Ryan Benoit.
Yes,
you interested in Ryan Benoit?
I am not interested at all whatsoever in Ryan Benoit. In fact, Locke, I have 0 stocks. I have 0 shares
Ugh.
of Ryan Benoit. I'd like to sell 2 of them.
There you go. I'll give the word to my guys over there at Prediction Strike, so hopefully they can get Benoit Saint Denis up there. I believe they should have put up.
Dibs.
Yeah, exactly. You're more than welcome to take that. Yeah, Maria Agapova. I remember they didn't have her when we initially started
Mashka.
this partnership with them, but she is on there right now. So there you go. All right, that should wrap up Fighter Stonks. Shout
Yes.
again to Prediction Strike. Make sure you guys use promo code LOCK and you'll get a free fighter stock after you deposit $20 or more. It is really blowing up, seeing it everywhere on a week to week basis. Can't wait to see what this looks like a year from now when we
Hell
have
yeah.
even more money circulating through there as well. So shout out to everybody supporting Prediction Strike and supporting the show by using the promo code as well.
Absolutely. Locke, that takes us to the Daily Doofus. The Daily Doofus, where we like to show up on this show and randomly insult a stranger who we think made a fool of themselves in the MMA community, Locke. That is what this segment is all about. And this week is tough because there's not a lot going on. Like we mentioned already, there's just not a ton of news going on in the world of MMA. So the Daily Doofus is something that we're going to have to kind of scrape by a little bit here on this one.
Oh, I got one. I got
Oh,
one.
you got one.
Oh, I got one.
Locke, just so I don't look like a fool going behind you, since you seem to already have a good one pulled up and ready to go. I'm going to just go ahead and say that Paulo Costa, maybe for the second time, is going to get my Daily Doofus Award because of his comments on Twitter. The Schmo put out an interview there. He's interviewing Luke Rockhold. And man, I just cannot get over Paulo Costa's inability to realize that he's a living meme. The man does not stop talking shit no matter how bad he looks or what he's done or how he's fucked up. That man does not find any fault on himself and will talk until he's blue in the face. And it's hilarious. I'm okay. Like, I get a nice little bit of entertainment out of it. But the fact that he just continues on blindly, even after especially his last fight, the debacle, missing weight, moving his opponent up a weight class, and then still getting his ass kicked. Like, I just can't with that guy, Locke. I just can't. It's not a very strong Daily Doofus. I would love to hear what you've got on tap for this week.
I already spoke about it a little bit earlier when we were doing the whole open scoring discussion, and it's got to be California State Athletic Commission head Andy Foster. I was appalled that he even brought up, the anticipation of hearing who the winner is as one of his arguments as to why there shouldn't be open scoring. I think that is absolutely irrelevant to the MMA contest that had just taken place. Entertainment, sure, it is a part of the sport, but it is not the exact reason why we have the sport. It is to go out there and see who actually deserves to win. So if you're just like, oh my God, let me grab my popcorn, I can't wait to see who won this decision, and I can't wait to hear Bruce Buffer scream it out. No, that has nothing to do with the fucking fight. So I apologize. Andy Foster has actually been one of the more progressive athletic heads that we've had in this game. So he has done a lot of great things for the sport. Don't get me wrong, but that as one of his reasons as to why he does not want open scoring, I thought that was daily doofus worthy. I just don't get it, Clint. Well, why are we having somebody in a position like him using that as a reason as to why we shouldn't have open scoring? Absolutely atrocious.
Okay. That is a much stronger opinion. And I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. I'm glad I let you go second.
I didn't want to upstage it too much. I apologize.
I
No
appreciate it.
worries.
Yeah, again, slow week. It was hard to prep for that one. I didn't have anybody particularly in mind. I actually had one guy, but I'll be honest, I didn't want to give him the rub, so I just decided not to mention it.
No worries. No worries. All right, let's roll right on through into the deadlock duel. It is the deadlock duel, and just tallying up the numbers once again. Clint, we had no numbers to tally up from this past week because we both took a big fat goose egg. I
Gotta love it.
had Holly Holm and Dushko Todorovic. Todorovic started off pretty well, then ate a hellacious elbow from Chidi Njokwani, ending his night and ending any hope of me getting points for that night. So 0 points for me. And on the flip side for Clint as well, he was on Holly Holm in the main event, gets robbed on that per se, if we want to call it that. And then he also went with Poliana Vienna, another one that I even questioned you that night as well when we did that, when we did the segment there. I'm like, what is this Poliana Vienna love? Like everybody, and I don't want to be, Captain Hindsight over here or anything like that, but I've seen a lot of people that was very respectful with and very much respected their opinion. A lot of people were very much on Poliana Vienna there, but the main reason I really didn't see it was her willingness to fight off of her back. And I felt like Tabitha Reach's jiu-jitsu was going to be able to hold up in that aspect. So, like I said, none of us scoring any points there. The lead is still 10-5 for Clint. We got how many? We don't have many events left here in the deadlock duel, Clint. We got
Coming down to it.
4 events left in the deadlock duel. So I really gotta muster up some points here. Hopefully hit a couple underdogs. Todorovic was the dog. If it wasn't Todorovic, I would have gone with Santiago Ponzinibbio. He shits the bed as well, so it doesn't matter anyway. I wouldn't have gotten any points.
Did he shit the bed though, Locke? I thought he won. That was
I
another
thought he won
close split
too.
decision.
I thought he won too, but the judges didn't, and that's what matters at the end of the day. So we will just be making picks for UFC Vegas 56, which is the event that goes down on June 4th. That's the one headlined by Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. We will be back for an episode before UFC 275, which is the next event after that. So 2 picks from me and Clint this week. Clint, you're actually going to kick it off here. So again, main event and 1 main card selection. What are you going to be going with?
So, Locke, I've already talked to you about how I like putting boot to neck. I don't want to play it safe, trying to get you out of here as far as putting this competition on ice for this round. So I'm not just going to be trying to, poach your picks or play favorites or anything like that. I'm going for it. It pains me, Locke. It pains me.
Oh, you're going to do
because
it? You're
Alexander Volkov is my boy. He is my boy. And I think I'm picking Jairzinho Rozenstruik in the main event. What we've seen work against Jairzinho Rozenstruik is take him down, wrestle him, or you've got to be able to touch him without getting touched back. And as much as I love my guy Volkov, he's got cardio for days. He's got defensive grappling for days. I don't think he can offensively wrestle for 25 minutes. So I do not expect him to come out here with a wrestling game plan and take down Jairzinho. If he does, I expect him to get gassed out, which also leads to a Jairzinho victory. And in the other example, he would be striking with Jairzinho Rozenstruik for a full 25 minutes. And if you do that, Biggie Boy has 25 minutes to land that one shot. And you know what? We have seen my boy Volkov go down from one big shot before. He fought a guy named Derek Lewis. He lost at the 9th hour, the literal last minute of that fight, because he let his guard down right before the end of the fight. Now, he learned his lesson, and I do think he can have some serious success at heavyweight, but he gets hit, Luck. He's not as defensively sound as I would like him to be. If Biggie Boy comes out there with any sense of urgency whatsoever, I think eventually he touches him. So I'm gonna call for the upset. I'll say Biggie Boy gets it done in the main event. Now for the rest of the card, this is a pretty tough card to call, if I'm being honest here, Luck. And let me pull up my odds here because I don't have odds for the rest of the card. to see who would be an underdog or a favorite. You know, actually, I don't even care. We'll figure it out later. Maybe a bit of a surprise here that I'm going to go with somebody like this, but I think Felice Herrig is going to maul Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Lock. I'm going to go ahead and say Felice Herrig. I know that she is nothing necessarily to write home about. It seems like the MMA game may have passed her. She is fully making bank selling feet pics on OnlyFans, but I saw the fire in Carolina's eyes die, Locke. I have seen her will to fight fade away. And she's come back from retirement already after calling it quits. That's never a recipe for success. I don't think this is a good spot for her to come back to. She's struggled with takedowns in the past. And if there's one thing Felice Herrig can do, Locke, it is overpower her opponent physically and take them to the ground. We've seen Carolina get overpowered physically time and time and time again. I think Felice Herrig gets the win. Is she the dog or the favorite? Do you know?
So that's the interesting thing about this fight. It's technically not announced. Shout out to our guy Big Marcel, who actually has it on his spreadsheet there.
Big
It's
Marcel.
verbally agreed by one party.
Oh,
It should be, fully agreed by both parties, I believe. But we're a week and a week and a half away from this fight actually going down. It's not officially announced, but yeah,
well,
it
shit.
should be. It should be technically. So we don't actually have odds out for this fight, but it is out there that it is a part of this card. I believe it's going to take place closer to the main card just because of the name value that we have in there with Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So yeah, if you want to take Herrig, we'll obviously monitor what the odds are when they actually come out.
Should I pick something
Um,
different just in case? Because it's not. I
I
thought it was
believe this
like
fight's.
done.
I'm pretty sure it's done deal. I'm
Okay.
absolutely certain it's a done deal. If it's not, you can just DM me your pick before the fight, and we'll go from there.
All right.
But yeah, we'll stick with Herrick for you. I believe she's going to end up being the favorite, if I'm not mistaken. So that would net you 1 point if she does end up winning that fight.
You would think so, but you never
I
know.
don't think so. Hey, yeah, exactly. But considering the public perception on Kovacevic, especially after losing her last fight the way that she did, I don't think anybody's running to the betting window to go out there and bet Karolina Kowalkiewicz. But yeah. Okay, so my guy Clint's going to go with the underdog in the main event, and then Felice Herrig will obviously find out those odds closer to the event. For myself, I am going to go with Alexander Volkov. I do think he'll be able to keep the distance here. I know he does get hit, but he is a towering human being to be able to hit. Hopefully, he can roll with the shots a little bit better, maintain his distance with that teep up the middle, and just keep Jairzinho on the outside. Rozenstruik has only ever won one fight by decision in his 12 career wins. And that one win was in Rizin, where they have a completely different scoring system than what they actually have in the UFC or most North American MMA promotions. They they score the fight pretty much as a whole, and I believe in that fight he did land pretty much a handful of knockdowns in that fight to win that decision. But here against Volkov, I think we'll see Volkov get his numbers up. I do think he is still capable of giving us performances of classic Volkov. Whether it's just picking his opponent apart and then finishing them later in a fight, or just picking them apart long enough to win a judge's decision. I don't believe he's washed. Nothing from his last 3 fights lead me to believe that he's completely washed. Right, getting outpointed by Cyril Gane, it's Cyril fucking Gane. Beating Marcin Tybura, but maybe not in the best form. He still went out there and won that fight.
He was
And
coming off
then
COVID, I think, on that one too, wasn't he? Wasn't that the
I
word?
believe that was the
Because he
word.
looked
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. But he still managed to pull it out, which is hilarious, right? He still managed to win, and people are still shitting on
Oh,
him
I had a
for
big
that
bet
win.
that night, Lock. I was
I did
terrified.
too. I did too. He was my lock of the night. He was my lock of the night. But yeah, and then obviously the Tom Aspinall fight, right? Like, color me surprised if Jairzinho Rozenstruik goes out there and starts landing blast doubles and arm bars Alexander Volkov in the spot. So I'm gonna go Volkov. Obviously, I can't bet him, right? My heart cannot handle 25 minutes of seeing him just evading, getting his separating from his consciousness. But I do think he is the side here. He should go out there and pretty much keep Jairzinho at range and win this fight via decision. And then for the rest of it, go ahead, continue. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it hurts my heart to bet against them because everybody knows
I
Volkov's my
know.
guy. So I got to run the tape. I still haven't done the research yet, like I said. So this is just kind of an early initial lean. I kind of hope I'm back on Volkov by the time the fight comes around.
I'm seeing a little bit of action coming in on Rozenstruik. So if anything, you might be getting a better number on Volkov should you wait on starting this fight and actually ended up paying it.
This one
So
might
I'm going to
have
go
to be a
Volkov.
pass because my heart is
Yeah.
involved.
There you go. So Volkov in the main event for me, and then the rest of the main card. There's not much I like from an underdog's perspective, right? Um, yeah, there's really not much. So I'm gonna have to go with the chalk here. I got to go with the guy that I just bought a stock in. I'm
There
gonna
you
go
go.
with Movsar Evloev to beat Dan Ige. Better grappler, better wrestler. We saw Korean Zombie have tremendous success in terms of nullifying Dan Ige on the ground. I feel like I've overrated Dan Ige in my mind in the past. I felt like I've underrated him as well, but I feel like we're starting to see what he truly is. He can go out there and turn your lights out in less than a minute, or he can grind you out and win close decisions like he has done against guys like Mirsad Bektic. But I just think Movsar has him beat pretty much everywhere. The Nick Lentz fight was sticking out to me a little bit too much as to why that fight was so close, and that Ige could potentially have some success in making it close as well. But after running the tape, man, Evloev is a guy that just does not stop moving in transitions or scrambling opportunities, and he does a good job in terms of staying ahead of his opponents. One step ahead, two steps ahead. He's always, more often than not, getting the last laugh and getting that opposition. So Evloev is going to be a very tough task for anybody to deal with, especially Dan Ige. So yeah, I completely understand why he's at minus 350. Absolutely deserving to be so. So I'm going to go Volkov main event and Evloev in the co-main event there. I can only get 2 points if both those win, but at least it's chipping away at this lead that Clint will likely have even after this event.
I like it. I like it. All right. I think we've just got one segment left to wrap up the show here, and then we'll call it a day.
Yes, sir. Let's get to know each other a little bit better, Clint.
Let's get deep.
All right, Clint, let's get right to the gist of it here. I don't think I've ever asked you this one, so let's get it out of the way. Have you ever broken any bones in your body? When and how?
Thank God, no. Let me just knock on the wood here. I have had several decent injuries, Locke. I thought I broke my foot doing jujitsu one time, rolling with a heavy weight, and he decided, actually, the guy was a real shitbag. Noticed that I had my foot sticking out the wrong way when I was in back control and like dropped both our body weights on it, almost snapped my ankle in half. Thankfully, it was just a sprain. I couldn't walk on it. I couldn't, dance at my sister's wedding for, because it was swollen, had to keep it up. But we got past it. No breaks, thankfully. And I'm going to mute my mic. Jeez.
No worries. No worries. I love the mute / yell. Like, I love that shit. It's my favorite things.
I don't know what they've been cool this whole time, and now you're gonna go nuts right at the end of the show, ruining the quality.
No worries, no worries. For myself, same thing. I've never had any crazy injuries. I've had a bum shoulder since high school. Doing push-ups. We used to do like a fitness test at the beginning of every gym class, and one of them was push-ups. And for some reason, I wanted to be a big shot, going for 50+ push-ups, and I just hear this like. And it was just more so tearing muscle fibers in my shoulder. It's been a reoccurring issue for me. Lower back issues since 15 years old, working at UPS, my first ever job, and just chucking boxes around like an idiot. One of them tore up my back, so I've been having lower back issues for the last 16 years at this point in time. And just a separate question, Clint, kind of in conjunction with this one. Have you ever had surgery of any sort?
You know what? Yes, I have, but it was a really lame surgery. It was oral surgery, Luck. I had some issues with my mouth before, so I did. Most of my injuries, I can't brag too much. I've had some nagging ones, kind of like you. I hurt my shoulder in football in high school. I hurt my shoulder, the same shoulder actually. I've got a similar nagging issue as you, from jujitsu back in the day. Had that ankle problem and lots of other like minor injuries that have all resolved. But the one surgery that I actually had that I had to deal with was for the inside of my mouth, and I don't want to gross anybody out talking about it. So like, we'll just leave it at that. Yes, I've had a surgery, but nothing worth writing home about.
Well, you got the best damn smile in the MMA betting sphere, period. So I'm sure that oral surgery really helped whatever was going on there. For myself, I the most I've ever had surgery wise, I had an ingrown nail in
Oh
my big
no.
toe. It was one of the worst feelings I've ever had. It actually happened around the first time that I worked with the UFC at UFC 129. I was wearing these very bad shoes, and I had to wear them pretty much all day, running around helping out the UFC set up whatever they needed to do for their media that week. Yeah, at the end of the week, like I just looked at my foot, and it was disgusting. Pretty much, I had to go under. No, sorry, I didn't go under. They froze my foot and they removed it the way that they did. But that's the closest thing I've ever had to surgery. Knock on wood. Don't ever have to do anything like that again because it scares the hell out of me. You know, thinking that somebody's going to open up my body and do something in my body. This scares the shit out of me. How we've come to that point with technology and science and all that shit. You know, humanity. We're living in the greatest time you could ever live. That we can actually go into that depth to cure somebody or heal somebody. But luckily, neither of us have had to go to that extent where we're worrying about stitches from our in our belly or something like that. So
Yeah, thank God
uh,
for that. Those are not. I don't even want to deal with those. If I can
I know
avoid that my whole life, fingers crossed.
exactly. Hopefully, nothing happens to me during wedding week now because I feel like I'm jinxing it, playing with the gods of fate at this moment in time. But yeah, that's a wrap on the episode. Clint, please do get us out of here.
You know, I don't have a whole lot this week, Locke. That's it. We're all doing some stuff. There's a lot of shit going on in the world right now, some really tragic stuff. So
Yeah.
thankfully, I just feel like we're blessed, man. We get to hang out with our friends, talk with some people that are cool on the internet about our favorite sport. And I think that that's something that we take for granted sometimes. So, everybody just do your best to be a good human being this week. That's the best I can leave you with because this week has been kind of rough for a lot of us because of everything that's going on. You, sir, good luck with all the wedding festivities. That's something that you need to survive and get through, come out strong on the other side. And honestly, we'll just be here, folks. We're going to provide the best damn betting content we can for you. And we're going to come right back here on the Deadlock podcast and have a little bit of fun, unwind with you, relax. So do us a favor. Best way you can support us, share the show, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and come play some Fighter Stonks with us. Go over Prediction Strike, use that deposit code LOCK, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Have a good one.